Boom, we're recording in progress. You hear that? And
I see it.
We're live on LinkedIn. We're live on Facebook. Hey, everybody, this is Teddy Burriss and my good friend Randy Wooden, our special guest, Carolyn Rhodes. You're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. It's May 26th of 2021. This is the last show of the January, February, March, April, May, 5th month. And I'm glad all of you decided to show up and join us today. It's going to be a great conversation. A little bit about me. I work for a business called Burriss Consulting. We're social media strategists focused on LinkedIn as a business tool, doing webinars, one-on-one coaching, corporate training programs. We got a mastermind group and a monthly webinar group. Anybody looking to get more value out of LinkedIn, give me a call. Let's chat. Hey, Randy, would you introduce yourself to everybody?
I will, but first I want to make sure that we know where everybody is watching us from.
Oh, yeah.
So let us know what city or country or universe or galaxy or wherever you call home.
Yeah.
Let us know. And Teddy's going to monitor the chat box. So as you have questions or comments for Carolyn, please jot them down in the chat box, not the Q&A, but the chat box. And we'll try to work those in as we go. But yeah, again, Randy Wooden with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina, based here in Winston-Salem, actually. And so kind of a hot and muggy day out there, a little overcast. Looking forward to the beach next week, Ted. I'm going to be building sandcastles. So I'll come back and I'm going to need a week or two to recover because, you know, the wheels are coming off, buddy. I tell you, it's
we need to talk about that. I don't know if we can pull that off, dude.
I don't know, but I run our professional center. And so if you or maybe you know people who are professionals that might be in a job hunt, that's who I serve. That's my clientele. And many of the folks on the call today and others that see us on LinkedIn, again, we're free. Reach out to me, give me a call, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. We're happy to try to help. And we've been doing this now for going on with Goodwill about 8-9 years. So it's, you know, we're not an overnight success, I guess, but, you know, we've stuck around and they're still paying me, Teddy. So unlike you, they're still paying me. So
well, I like what I do so much that for 11 years now, I've not gotten a paycheck, and I'll keep doing it. She tells me that all is good. Just keep what I'm doing. And if I need to buy beverages, I am allowed to buy beverages. So.
It's in the budget. Carolyn Rhodes is our guest this week, and I'll introduce Carolyn in just a brief, short synopsis and have her tell a little bit more about her. But she is with Rhodes Consulting and has been in HR consulting and diversity, equity, inclusion and consulting for years. And so our topic today is not necessarily DEI, although we may touch on that a bit, especially in now that we're a year past George Floyd's murder, and how that's impacted our main topic. And that is dealing with the hiring process as it relates to applicant tracking systems, artificial intelligence, and biases. And biases on the part of an employer in how they go about looking for and retaining and hiring folks, and also biases faced by the candidate and perhaps what they can do to address those. So understanding biases and confronting them, that's our topic today. So be thinking about your question. So let me throw it to you right now, if I could. Carolyn, tell us a little bit more about you. Where are you and what do you do over there?
Oh gosh, I do everything, but I'm Carolyn and it's good to be here. I'm so glad everyone's chimed in. I am Carolyn Rhodes. I think there's a Bruce on the call with the last name Rhodes. And so welcome. We're not related. But I am Carolyn. I want to say before I get into my professional work that I used to and still do dab in some stand-up comedy. So I think I'm funny. So if I say anything on this call that's funny, please continue to laugh and I'll keep going. But I am Carolyn, and I have a consulting firm that is called Rhodes Consulting, and I specialize in DEI consulting. And what our work is rooted in is basically ensuring that organizations I work with their DEI initiatives and ensuring that their sustainability across their DEI efforts. I am also involved in human resources, and I've been doing that work for since college in the 90s. Don't tell anyone that. And And but I'm not HR siloed. I've worked in different organizations, whether there's nonprofit in the nonprofit sector, whether or not that is also in the corporate sector and banking and finance. So I've just been around the table, but that is what I do. And I work with a lot of senior leaders and CEOs in reference to their diversity initiatives.
Very cool. So I always ask the why question. That's the
Yeah.
first question I ask most folks. And not everybody, but most people have it. Well, maybe not even most. Let's just say many people have a great passion for what they do. Some
Yeah.
people it's just a paycheck, and I get that. But the folks that appear on our show, by and large, all of them are passionate about what they do, and it comes through in their voice and their body language and everything else. So help us understand the why. What got you down the path that you're going on?
I mean, I think for me, it was that, for one, I wanted to see change. And I had always been, as a little girl, as a young girl, it was just always, really involved in changing communities and helping people and answering questions and trying to problem solve. So I wanted to take everything that I had learned in all of my professional experiences and say, how can I make a greater impact into people's lives, whether or not that is through encouraging or coaching executive leaders to make change within their organization. But I always wanted just to have people be better. And so that is the why that I do this work, because I want organizations and the employees in those organizations to do better and to thrive.
I got you. So interesting. And I would imagine your work has taken on even a greater prominence and more emphasis here in this past year or two. So we'll talk more about that. But let's start, I guess, with understanding terminology, because many people have heard artificial intelligence and applicant tracking systems and even biases. And I think people may have differing thoughts on what those are. So at least for today's discussion, let's start first off with artificial intelligence. How are you going to define that in your terms?
Yeah, so I think artificial intelligence is man and computer, right? And so it is all of these ideas that come from humans, or whether or not that's a small homogeneous group, and people embed them into technology. And so when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's algorithms, and then there's machine learning. And algorithms are really using this historical information to make a prediction about the future. And then you have machine learning, which is AI in itself, which is a scoring system that scores the probability of what you're about to do. Like, are you going to pay back this loan? Have you been fired from this job? Will you, if we hire you? And so it's really about data and the machines that are using to predict certain patterns over a period of time.
I get you. So Teddy, did you follow all that?
I did, dude. I did. I know daggone well, Randy, that we are all measured 17 different ways from freaking Sunday, man. And
we are.
Systems are collecting data about you and I all day long. And I think there's a group of people that are just plain scared.
Yeah, that's right.
If not, they ought to be. All right, so that helps us understand artificial intelligence. So basically, algorithms they're historical. This is what's happened in the past, and then machine learning is okay. That's in the past, but now let's look at you specifically, and if you will, form odds on, or this is the likelihood based on the new input that we're getting on the likelihood that you're going to work out here. That kind of a thing. So
Absolutely.
that is as we, just like us as humans, we learn, and as we learn more, or as we've heard, as we know better, we do better, and that's kind of the same thing in some way. So let's move and switch now definition wise to applicant tracking systems, ATS. What's that?
Yeah, so applicant tracking system is just a it's just a system that's housed within the organization to, scan or use as a system to upload your resume to that system. And the reviewer, there is a reviewer on the other end of that. That is a person like me looking at your resume. It's not like an AI that says, okay, use this person in this applicant tracking system. So the applicant tracking system is just a house, really, where all of your resumes are stored, and the reviewer can go in to just type in keywords around like HR. Did that person have human resources on their resume? And be able to pull every resume that is that has the words human resources. So it's kind of like this filtering system that the person on the other end is actually looking at. Because, and I will say this, Randy and Teddy, is that companies get so many resumes. And so they can't really, when a long time ago, we used to look at every single resume, but because of technology, it's like, we got to shoot them out just like that. So this tracking system allows individuals to kind of use keywords and so that we may miss a few, but it allows us to kind of narrow down the search when it comes to certain jobs.
Yeah, it's also good for reporting purposes too. So if I walk down the hall and say, so where do we stand on this position? You can tell me, so-and-so, this is how many people we've done a phone screen. This is where we are in the process. So for reporting purposes, applicant tracking systems are a great thing, really, because it allows a company to document exactly where everybody stands. And so that's a good thing. Now let's move into another definition, and that is biases. Is that the same as prejudice, stereotype? I mean, are there degrees of sort of, and then more and even more? Where does biases fit in on this thing? What are they?
Yeah, so biases is, we all have them. And biases come in when we're using those, using our own thinking or inequality, our own way of thinking, or wanting certain groups of people to come into our organization. And we tend to wean people that are not, that do not have that cultural fit or come into the culture that is like us. So that's when biases start to play a big part of the hiring process or the recruiting process, whether or not that's through AI or whether or not that's through the applicant tracking system. So in AI, what is happening is that, the algorithms are saying, face people, bring people in that are more men, attract more people that are men, or attract people that have lighter faces, attract, so women sometimes are excluded from the process. African-American women are excluded. African-American men are excluded. Other people of color may be excluded because the AI is really saying, okay, we don't want those types of people in there. We want this type of people in there. And so that is happening on the AI side. And that causes biases in itself. And then you have the applicant tracking system. When we tend to hold on, the reviewer is tending to hold on to, maybe they didn't go to the same school that I went to. Maybe their name is different and I can't pronounce their name. Maybe they were fired from a job or didn't stay at this job a long period of time. Therefore, I'm not going to give them, move them to the next round of the interview. And so that's when our own personal biases become a part of the recruiting process that then tends to not give people an opportunity to interview for a position.
So a couple things, Carolyn. I've always thought that with algorithms and checkboxes and variables that you can put into AI, that organizations may actually put in some filters that exclude people based on my words, illegal biases. I think you just told me that that is happening.
It does happen
in the algorithms. Like, oh my God, people are actually, writing algorithms to say, if he's 4'2", I don't want to hire him. If he's an old white guy, I don't want to hire him. If he's
right.
if I can't spell his name, I don't want to hire him. That's horrible that we're doing that with systems, let alone I know we're doing it with humans because
Right.
humans' biases get in the way every day.
Well, yeah, and I think, Teddy, that's a great point. And we have to remember that man or people are putting this information into the algorithms. They are designing the algorithms. So who are the drivers of these algorithms? And so if companies are saying we want technology to start doing this, then we have a bigger problem. We have a systemic problem that says that, leadership, our senior leaders want these types of people to feed into our technology to hire these certain types of people.
Yeah.
And so that's what's happening.
Yeah, I'm with you. Here's Lorinda asked a question. So based on the discussion about biases, should we exclude entering our sex and ethnicity, et cetera, into the job application?
Yeah, it's a thin line for me, and I remember, applying for jobs and I was like, it's none of their business, if I'm a female or black or, whatever. But I think for me, I still believe that you should. And because the company, if you are applying for the company, that means you have some interest in the company. And if you have interest in the company, regardless of whether you feel how you feel about it, they're tracking something and they have to track it from a business standpoint. So I think it's okay. And I will also say that if you don't, if you have some hesitancy about doing that, then you shouldn't apply to the role, to the company.
I look at that similarly, Carolyn. Organizations have to be measuring, who's applying, who's not applying. So, and who's getting the jobs, who's not getting the jobs. So we can, discover these blatant biases that are going on. And B, as you said, I think that if they don't want to hire a 63-year-old old white guy with blue eyes and, a funky toenail, then I don't want to work there.
But he's handsome and he's intelligent, Teddy.
I get
you are talking about yourself, right?
I'm talking for a friend, Randy. Speaking for a friend.
Yeah.
I got one more question, if I may, Randy.
Yeah.
Lisa asked regarding ATS, applicant tracking systems hiring. Do you see a movement where we go away from video interviews and remove people's names and just label them candidate 1 and candidate 2? Is that a movement?
Yeah, it's a movement for a great company to do, right? And I think that, when I was a director of HR, one of the things that for an organization, one of the things that I did was really I wasn't able to see education level. I wasn't able to see their names. I wasn't able to see what schools or whether or not they had gone to college or attended a 4-year university. So I think more companies are becoming aware of that around from a DEI initiative, D&I initiative, or just from a great HR best practices. And so we'll start seeing more movement around that as organizations try to change and improve their processes and policies.
Got it.
Yeah, Art Gibble was on a couple 3 weeks ago. He's a recently retired CEO. He actually was my boss's boss at our Goodwill of Northwest North Carolina. And he spoke of that as it relates to some companies that don't divulge. They don't want to see the person, and so they're trying to do what you're saying. I want to circle back to something that I sat through panel discussion, or I don't know. Same question came up. Do I divulge that I'm Caucasian, that I am a male,
Yeah.
and all of that stuff? And so my takeaway from hearing that panel discussion could be incorrect. So I want to throw it at you, and to the degree you want to tackle this, go ahead. Now there's the law, and then there's what really happens. Okay.
Yes.
So, and I get that, but my understanding, my takeaway was this: when you fill out the job application, where you work, the education, all that, that's a separate component versus the ethnicity, the race, all that stuff. And that second component, the ethnicity, the gender and such, that goes to a different department within HR that does the reporting. It doesn't go to the hiring official. So there's a wall of separation legally there that the hiring manager doesn't get to see, that, info that goes into the tracking folks. Is that real? Does that exist in the real world? Is that a law, and does it exist in the real world?
I don't know if it's a law, and I'm gonna be scared to say that, but I don't believe that it exists in the real world. I think
You don't.
I do
Okay,
not.
good.
I do not believe that it exists in the real world.
Right.
What actually happens in these corporations is that the way, and Teddy hit on this a little bit around measuring, the ethnicity, the gender, the
EEOC.
EEOC. And what happens, there's a report, which is called an affirmative action plan. And that report is really given to mainly the senior leaders at the organization, so that they can then, I'm probably giving too much information, but so that they can then say, okay, we have a diversity problem. We're not hiring enough women. We're not hiring enough women of color. We're not hiring enough men. We're not hiring in this age bracket. So they get those reports because they have to make sure that they're following the guidelines around EEOC.
Good. So while whether it's a law or not, we're going to punt on that one. But reality is, for those who have that concern that, oh no, it's going to be used against me, that probably is unfounded for the most part.
For the most part.
I agree.
For the most part.
For the most
okay,
part.
well, that's good to know. So we've talked definitions, and as Teddy monitors the chat box, we'll see what else.
Keep going. We're good.
Bubbles up. But how prevalent is artificial intelligence in today's business world?
I think, and I keep going back to like small, medium, and large organizations. I think eventually, the smaller organizations, meaning like less than 100 or 500 employees, aren't really going to use artificial intelligence, because the hiring of those organizations, they can probably do internal. And save on costs there. The medium organizations, which is about 5,000 employees or less, will be using AI. And those that have more than 5,000, like the Microsoft and the Googles and Amazon, will continue to use AI. But I think it is prevalent to today, because technology is moving at such a fast pace. And companies are moving away from paper, moving away from, how things are measured, and hiring the people to actually do the work. So they're relying on computers, technology to do that. And so I think it's very prevalent to today in companies.
And what we're also seeing, because I had talked to some other folks in this context that do PPE, what's it called? They hire employees for employees.
Professional courses.
Yeah, and so what's happening is the cost of doing these processes is being driven down to a lower level, that smaller and smaller organizations can take advantage of it, because it's not as expensive as it used to be. You had to put your own systems in. Now all that is software as a service, and the more software as a service grows, the cheaper it becomes to use those tools.
That's right. And that's right. And you're using those tools, and then you're kind of reducing the number of people that you have to have in these organizations to scan and filter applications.
Yeah, Burriss Consulting got rid of their recruiter. We don't need one anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't have a recruiter either. But yes.
Yeah, there's a lot. In fact, we had a guest on, and memory escapes me now how long ago it was, talking about ATS systems, and something that kind of stuck with me a little bit. Many of the larger companies with legacy, everything's already in place and such, they're still stuck in the we're not going the AI route because it's so expensive to integrate it, where you got these younger, newer, growing companies who don't have the ATS system. So now for them, it's cheaper to get ATS, AI, and FBI, CIA, and every other acronym you can think of. They can get it all at one time. And to Teddy's point, at a price point they can stomach. And so a lot of times those medium-sized companies, surprisingly, may be more advanced than some of what we would normally think might be the leaders in that area. Hey, there's a question that Mike threw out, and I remember this from a long time ago, and I told him, don't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking from the 90s, maybe early 2000s. And it's taking and using what I'll call white print instead of black print, putting words real tiny, all the keywords that appear in the job description or the qualifications, and just putting them in the margins. Nobody can see them because they're white and the paper's white if somebody prints it. So it's like invisible ink. Remember that as a kid? And you had the X-ray glasses and the invisible ink and the card tricks. But Teddy's
I'm looking for my invisible ink pen, buddy.
He's got his crystal ball somewhere there too that shakes, but it's and I totally forgot what I was going to say. But the idea here is that to fool the tracking system, do you want to put all these little tiny words that nobody can see, but that the system will pick up, and hopefully you pass the smell test and somebody gets to talk to you?
No, and I think, thank you for asking that question. I think there's no right way. And I think we want to have this one size fit all approach to this. And we believe that if I do it this way, if I trick the system this way, then my resume is going to get to that, to where it's going to be seen. And your resume can be seen and get to be seen by someone, but that still does not guarantee that you're going to get an interview. And so I would go against doing that invisible,
keyword stuffing.
Keyword stuff, and instead use words that will get your resume to the top. And I think one of the things that I tell people all the time is that what you want to be doing is really using your skills and experience and putting that on the resume and ensuring that it is aligned with the job description that you're applying for, because a lot of times they don't mesh and they're not aligned, and that is what keeps your resume from going to a reviewer.
Google years ago, Google shut down keyword stuffing because people used to do that. Used to use 2-point text, white letters on a white website page, and keyword stuff. And Google shut that down. And so when I read about this a year or so ago, that the algorithms are written now, if the keywords are way too heavy based on the story or based on the relevant components of your experiences, then that it can kick you out, totally kick you out. So any type of
and I think, Teddy, what is really important is that companies want people that are different. There's still a humanistic approach, even though we're using technology programs, there's still a humanistic approach. And so companies want different things, and they don't want you to just have this one size fit all, or you're doing everything the same way that we want. They want, like, what is different about Randy? What is, does he take comedy classes? I don't know. Like, is he actually funny? So I think that's what should be showcased on these resumes, is not so much trying to get it to fit, but really kind of showcasing who you are.
Yeah. I wonder too, if there's a component of the old bait and switch. So, okay, fine. So I did try to stuff this, or I put a bunch of keywords in here that make me look like Superman. And now you look at me and I'm like that 98-pound weakling when I show up for the interview.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I made it to the interview, but
You can't get up to the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but the biggest concern that job hunters have is I don't hear back. I apply, I don't hear back, or I don't get the interview, and I know, doggone it, that I'm qualified. And so for them, that if they can get over that hump and get the interview, they feel like I got it made to some degree. And so I get that from a human standpoint. And I guess I would harken back to something you said earlier, Carolyn, about keywords, and that's they need to be legitimate. They need to be legit. And I always talk about accomplishments. And if you can quantify them with units, dollar amounts, number of people, that kind of a thing, to show that whatever you touch, you're good at. Because if you just have keywords, there's a million people that have the keywords.
Absolutely.
Doesn't make them any good at it, but it just means that they've been in the room when it's been going on, right? So,
and I know we have to take a break, but I will say that I think that, you know, I always say I think, but we should be honest, you know, honest with ourselves, honest with what we can do and what we cannot do. And if companies are even asking for a cover letter, which that's a whole nother topic that we can talk about another day, it's like that's where you show your honesty. If you're lacking something or you're gaining something, I think that's where you can put most of your what I call meat and potatoes that you just can't get into your resume.
Yeah, cool stuff. Hey, everybody, it's Wednesday, May 26th. It's 12:30. You're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy, and our special guest today is Carolyn Rhodes. The conversations about artificial intelligence and biases in the process of applying and getting to that interview. Randy, back to you, buddy.
Yeah, we've defined the terms artificial intelligence, applicant tracking systems, biases. We've sort of given some examples of what those might be. And so we'll tackle that in a little more detail. And this is something I think that you may have touched on already, but if you'd like to circle back on it, what are some problems that exist with AI? Problems that, things you can share that if you had a magic wand like I do. Teddy, do you have a magic wand in that drawer? This guy's like, remember Monty Hall on Let's Make a Deal? And he go, hey, I'll give you $10 for a paperclip. Well, Teddy's the guy that would have the paperclip and the stapler and the pencil sharpener that you put the little pencil in like that.
There's a few things in here I can't show you, Randy. They're proprietary.
But so what are some of the problems? If there's anything that you can think of that says, you know, this AI stuff, it's all good, but if we could fix some stuff as we're going along, here's some things I think I'd like to adjust.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I would like to adjust, and you know, is that people should not be weaned out or discriminated against just because they are of a certain group or a certain class. And I think that's where I fall short with AI, when people are weaned out just because they are a woman or because they're a woman of color or because they're darker or lighter or seen or viewed as something that they're not. And I think with AI for me is that it's also, it embeds the dark past. And I think it's not racist, or I don't think it's sexist, but I think it embeds the dark past, and that it doesn't show any accountability of who we are today as a people, as a country. And so I would, you know, and I would just say there's so many inequalities there with artificial intelligence. And I think if we're going to use it, we still need to also use humans at the same time. So.
Imagine that, the human touch.
Yes.
Think back, when was the last time either of you were able, or maybe Carolyn on your end, you were being an HR, when was the last time somebody could actually walk into a company, I want to talk to the hiring manager, and go in and shake a hand and give him a business card or her business card or whatever? When was the last, do you remember the last time that somebody was able to walk into an office and do that?
I know it was in 1995 for me. I was just starting out in HR.
Fresh out of college.
Yes, fresh out of college. I'm still in college. But yeah, I think that was like in the early 90s. And it's not happening anymore. And technology, while we're so connected, we're disconnected. And so I always encourage people to make as many connections as you can on LinkedIn, specifically, or even if you're at the coffee shop, talk to people, because that is really what, networking and connections will also kind of get your foot in the door into these organizations.
Let me follow up on that a little bit too. This goes back to biases.
Yeah.
So I've got you and I got Teddy. I don't know who you are.
No.
But Teddy is referred to me by a friend. Okay. So even though you can do the job, I don't care whether you're black, white, female, whatever. You could be Teddy's age, Teddy's gender, Teddy's race. You could be you could both be old white guys. Let's just be honest here. But because I have
Carolyn.
because I have a bias toward somebody like me, meaning a mutual friend who says, hey, Teddy's got a story to tell. I'm more apt to have confirmation bias toward him, even though he is of the same, he went to the same school you did. Everything's the same, but it's because of the personal relationship that you touched on. Am I off base with that?
No, I think you're right. There's definitely what I heard, Randy, is there's similarity bias, right? And there's confirmation bias. And we tend to gravitate towards those that are like us. And and I think that is that's unfair. And we should we definitely should get to a place where we're trying to not just get people who are in that same group, that homogeneous group of people, versus someone like Carolyn who you don't know anything about, and that you might end up learning about, or that can bring a different perspective to you.
Interesting, because
I'm with you, Carolyn. I think that biases are real. Biases are all over us, and I think there's some value in that. What's the word you use, Randy, when someone introduces that familiarity bias? If I introduce someone to a hiring manager and that person trusts and respects me, they're going to have a conversation with that person, I think, despite the differences. Because I've introduced all kinds of people to all kinds of people, and they get those conversations. Now, I'm with you. I think that if we're only want to have a conversation with people who are like us, that's a bad bias. Not only is that a bad bias, that is also life delimiting. I like that. To totally delimit your life and reduce your opportunities. But that's a part of networking. For me to introduce Carolyn to my friends who need someone like Carolyn, that happens all day long. And then you can benefit from that when you're willing to grow your network and develop trust, respect, and like with people in your network.
Yeah, and I think it definitely helps or is beneficial, because that person is the person that you're talking to is like, I trust Teddy, and whoever is a friend of Teddy could be a friend of mine, right? Kind of. I think it's still some wiggle room there, but
with you.
Definitely some wiggle room there. But I think, as when it comes to job searching or seeking, if that's the way you're going to make the connection and network, I think that's totally okay. It doesn't, and two, it doesn't mean that you're going to get the job. You just might get in front of the person a little bit quicker. And so, but the bias comes in is when we're, like you said, Teddy, like, I'm going to hire that person just because I know Teddy, and I'm not going to hire or even interview the rest of the people.
And that's a mistake. That too is a mistake. Right. You got to look at all your options, not just the people that Teddy say look at.
That's right.
There's multiple channels to a conversation. One of those channels is through ATS.
That's right.
Another one of those channels is through your network.
That's right. And we have to get back to, I always tell people, we just got to get back to this humanistic approach. You can't be afraid to send an email to someone you don't know. You can't be afraid to do your research on the back end to say, what is it about this company that I really like?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't do that research. And then we get into these companies and like, I didn't even want to work here, right? Or I don't even, and so we don't even like the person that we're interviewing with. So I think we have to do work on the back end on ourselves and before we even start to apply for certain positions.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went off on a tangent.
No, you're fine. And some of this, you get into science and as technology advances, and if we cede our control to technology, then we're at its mercy in some ways, and it does take out the human, because humans hire humans and humans work with humans and do business deals with humans. We don't hire paper. And hopefully we don't hire just some applicant tracking system, bunch of words on a computer screen. You mentioned something earlier, and we can go back to it. You kind of hit on it, I think, but just in case you wanted to add to it, automated exclusion. I'd not heard that term before. Automated exclusion.
I know what that is, Carolyn.
Go ahead, Teddy.
If you show up in a yellow shirt, then you're leaning towards this football team, and I don't want you on my team. That's what it is, right? Maybe not.
Maybe not. I mean, I hope not.
I hope not.
I hope not. Let's just say that. But yeah, automated exclusion is really when you don't complete everything that the applicant tracking system is asking you for.
Oh, okay.
So what happens is a lot of times, and I'm so guilty of this when I used to be in the job market. I was like, all I need to do is put my resume. Why do I have to go line by line of all of the things I've already put on my resume into this applicant tracking system? That automatically excludes you from getting into the your resume to the reviewer. So when you upload your resume, make sure you still complete the tabs or whatever they are in the applicant tracker system, even though they reflect on your resume. And a lot of times people don't do that.
So could that be one of could not put in my sex, choosing the option I'd rather not tell.
Yeah.
Choose the option I'd rather not talk about my ethnicity. I'd rather not talk about if I'm a vet or not. Choosing all those I'd rather not. Could those become automatic exclusions?
They could, and that just depends on the company.
Yep. Yeah.
And different companies have different practices. But I would say something like salary. Be honest about that. If you want your salary to be $250,000, I wish that was me, indicate that on, okay, I should be more realistic, $40,000, but you really want $60,000. And the position is, they didn't list the salary range on the job description. Make sure you indicate that, because companies need to know whether or not they can afford you, or whether or not they have it in the budget to bring you in. And no one wants to waste each other's time. If I can just be honest about that, is that there's no need for me to interview you if you're looking for 70,000 and this position is 40.
Yeah.
Is there a point though where it becomes doable? I get it. If you want 70 and this thing pays 40, they're not going to look at you. I mean, you could be Teddy's twin brother and they still wouldn't talk to you.
Right.
Right. But is there a point at which, let's say you said 50.
Yeah.
And the job probably pays high end 40, 42, 43. Do you talk to that guy? Or at some point, do you say, you know what, I'm sitting on 300 other applicants over here. Let me go to the low hanging fruit and find the ones that haven't screened themselves out by saying $1 over what I'm willing to pay realistically.
Yeah, I think companies are good. I hope that some companies are good about this. They have a budget. We have a budget, and there's always a range. There's always a salary range. So if you're looking for 50, sometimes it depends on like, okay, well, I can bring this person in at $50,000. They ask for it. They have more skills and experience. So I'm willing to pay that. I'm more, able to be a little lenient, because if the range is if the salary is 40,000, they probably have a range from 40 to $55,000. So they will most likely bring you in because they really want the person that can do the job.
Yeah.
And so there's always some wiggle room around there.
Yeah,
So-
they're looking for value, and bang for the
absolutely.
bang for the buck, just like I am. If they tell me the range is 40 to 50, I'm like, hey, what am I, chopped liver? I ought to be toward the high end of that. And,
Right.
and
Yeah. You and me both, buddy. Yeah. Hey, Carolyn, Mike asked this question. Mike said he read somewhere, and he's going to go find that article for me, and I'll look at it. But he read somewhere that only 3 to 5% of the jobs are filled through online job applications. Do you have any information in that context?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know the stats right offhand. I've been kind of far removed from that, but I think there is at least 10% there that are through online job applications, and I think the rest is through connections and networking.
Yeah, and Randy, I'd love do you know roughly that stat from what you've heard?
No, I don't, but I have to kind of qualify that a little bit. I think we've always heard 90% of the jobs are unadvertised. Well, that's crap. I mean, back in the day when it cost an arm and a leg to advertise in a Sunday paper, yeah, I get that. Yeah. But now every company worth their salt has a website, and there's scrapers that pick it up. So you're a moron if you can't find jobs online. All you need to do is have access to a computer and a working finger, and you can apply for any job in the world. Now, whether you're qualified or not, that's the reason for the ATS systems, because they got guys like Teddy and me throwing our resume out there for jobs that we're not even close to. So, but back to the initial thought here is, okay, fine. I see the job online. I need to apply so that I'm in their system, and then enlist the help of my network to have somebody tap Carolyn on the shoulder and say, hey, Randy's in your stack, take a look. Because if I haven't done the application first, now they go to you and you go in the system and you go, this dude's not here. What is he trying to bypass HR?
That's right. And that's a good point, is that, you may be overlooked for one job, right, and in the system, but with larger corporations, there are multiple jobs. So you can still use your same resume for that for a different job. And so you want to be registered with them. And then you also want to follow them on LinkedIn or see who you know in that network, that you can get an interview, but you want to make sure you're already in their system.
Yeah, and maybe I was a little harsh with the word moron. I learned that from the Three Stooges, so I'll blame that on my upbringing. But here again, jobs are so prevalent, so many jobs, with the exception of confidential hires. If I'm trying to replace somebody, I get that we don't want to let them know that they're on thin ice. So I get that, and there are many retained searches at the high level that they just, if a company's searching for a CEO, they're not going to put it on Indeed, right?
No.
So I get that.
Yeah.
But by and large, most jobs are going to be advertised or visible somewhere on the internet. If you look hard enough, you can find them. Yeah. And so now you're one of many, 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 many people, qualified or not, that's in their system. So how do you get picked out of the system? We've talked about keywords. We've talked about networking. And so those are a couple things. We've only got just a minute or two left. So Teddy, are there other questions?
No, we're caught up.
For companies using an ATS, how many applications are actually being reviewed? You have a rough idea on that?
Yeah. It depends on the job itself, the role itself. If it's a unique job, where the company is thinking about maybe hiring for this role or creating a new role, then there might not be an influx of resumes. And so it just depends on the size of the organization. So if it's a small organization, you may roughly get about, 200 applications for one, or resumes for one role. And out of those, only 50 may be reviewed, if that. Just depends on the manpower there. And then for larger organizations, it just the larger you go, the less is being reviewed. And so it just depends on the position. And I would say that a lot of times it's not what is happening with companies now is that people are really hiring internally. So when there's a role that is coming out, a position that's coming out into the world, the position may not even come to fruition. They may never hire for that position. They may be trying to just get a filter or interest in that position, or whether or not that role is needed for the organization. So it's not necessarily like I didn't get my resume didn't make it. It's just that they probably haven't gotten to it. But I think there's no definite number of how many resumes are actually reviewed through the applicant tracking system. I think it just depends on the position and the company.
So, Carolyn, just your thought on this. Steve asked about creating a unique resume for every job, and he's really reluctant to post a single resume on, I think, Indeed, Monster, Career Builder, Ladder, Simply Hired, etc., because a single resume only gives that entire network of one single view of you. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan or a big advocate around posting your resume like on an Indeed, like that single one resume. But thinking that someone's just going to pick up your resume, because it doesn't happen. And so I think that I think the most effective way to do it is to use your resume, but apply for roles at those companies individually.
Specifically.
Yeah.
I've got a question too, Teddy, based on what's in the chat box. And I know we're kind of cutting into our last segment of wrapping up here, but it goes back to what I'll call the confidential hiring, where the company's not going to run an ad. So I'm sure they'll put the private word out to their private network, not on LinkedIn, because they don't want everybody seeing it. But a lot of times in that case, they'll hire an outside staffing firm to do the dirty work, and just, so that's how that works. And the question was basically, well, look, if applicants are not submitting their information to the tracking system, how does a company know if they're interviewing or, talking to a certain number of, whether race, veterans, and other, if you will, ethnicities. So, but staffing firms track that stuff, right? And so they'll know. Is that it?
So the company, there's no workaround. The company actually works with the staffing firm and says, this is what I need. This is what we're looking for, and use your network to do it. And those networks can be from their own networks, or, just with other companies, as far as, because they're doing what we're doing. They're seeking out, or what the applicant is doing, the job hunter is doing, they're seeking out like people on LinkedIn. They're like ghosting their LinkedIn to say, oh, they were the CEO of Rhodes Consulting. And then they may contact me on LinkedIn privately or DM me, but they're not actually putting it out there. So there is that confidential hiring that takes place, but there's no workaround around that.
Yeah, so they will ultimately track, though, how many females are we interviewing and that kind of a thing.
Yep, absolutely.
It'll still get tracked, even if that person isn't submitting the application. Now, I would, I guess, also contend that if they reach a point in the interview process, they will ask that person to fill out the application so that all of that information is in the system, but they won't ask that of the candidate at the initial, hey, guess what we have available here. They're not going to do that that early in a process.
And by the way, that only applies to specific size organizations. C is not relevant to smaller. I don't know where the break is.
That's right.
25 or I don't know.
50 or something. I'm not sure.
Like that. All right, so we're about ready to wrap this thing up. So what I'd like you to do, Carolyn, if you would, give us some takeaways you'd like us to have. Take a couple 3 minutes on that, and then Teddy and I'll do a real quick story, and we'll talk about next week, and we'll get on out and have some lunch.
Yeah, so my quick takeaways, I would just say, and is that one, just do the work. If you are a job seeker, just do the work, do your work on the back end, really research these companies, see who you're connected with on whether that's LinkedIn or through your coffee shops or your Frisbee clubs, whatever that could be. I play Frisbee. So, I'm always, and, gain and talk to other people. And I think, and then I would say, secondly, write your resume or your cover letter if they're asking for one, not just specifically to the job description, but make it more about yourself. Who are you? What do you want them to know? What is it that they don't know? Lazo always talks about this, and I agree, is that give them something before they ask. And so that way, if I had to give a takeaway, it will be that give these jobs, these companies something before they ask. So give them something different. 3, I would say not to really focus on, what is working with AI, what's not working on AI, what's not working in the tracking system. If you're using these tools, just keep up the job searching. Something will come available.
Do the work.
Do the work. You have to do the work.
Carolyn Rhodes, thank you for joining us today and talking about AI, ATS, biases, and you're a comedian. So I don't know if you've got a good one-liner or two to throw at us, but if you think of it in the next minute or two,
we'll let you close with it.
Lay it on us. I'll give you a quick story, Ted. I won't take just a quick second. And the quick thing is this, I don't care where you are in your career, age-wise, what you do for a living or whatever, technology is always changing, evolving, and growing. So again, the days of the handshake, walk in, hey, here's my card. Can I interview with you? That's not going to happen. And so our ability to adapt to the change, I think, is key. And so listening to people like you who have knowledge that many of us don't have, how do we navigate this new world that many of us aren't accustomed to? We haven't had to deal with ATS. We don't know. And frankly, we don't care to know what AI is. All we know is I don't like it. And because I can't shake a hand. So networking is key. Don't turn that networking off when you've landed a job.
Yeah.
Because if we live long enough, we're going to be in a job hunt again. And guess what? It's tough to start that momentum all over again. So just keep at it. Network, and keep your skills up. Be a lifelong learner, because that's going to help with your job security as you get farther into your career, because you've shown you've kept up. And I'm out. Teddy, what you got?
Get ready for, I'll introduce our guest for next week. So here's my story. Don't rely 100% on your resume, period. Do not. You can't. There are multiple channels to get that conversation, which leads to the interview. It can be through the ATS with your resume and cover letter built appropriately so that it goes through those systems in the most appropriate way. You also need to use your network. What Randy just said, you've got to use your network. And here's another one too. If you really like that company and you think you'd be a great fit, you know what? Write a letter to the director of that department. Write a letter to the business, the business leader or the owner. Send them a message, and say, and invite them to a conversation. That's the magic. Don't say you got to hire me. Invite them to a conversation about how you think you might be able to help them. Dig your well before you need the water. Go Google that. It'll make sense once you think about it. Dig your well before you need your water. Keep growing your network. So our guest next week, Randy. Who is it next week?
Bobby Davis.
Bobby Davis. So Mr. Bobby Davis. Bobby owns a company called Cortex. He owns a company called Coder Foundry. Bobby and I talked and we said, look, people need to look at new ways of learning and new ways of getting into jobs. And one way of doing that, we're going to talk about, make this the example, is to go back to school and go back to boot camps. Coder Foundry is a software development boot camp. Really cool business model. Coder Foundry for coding is not the only thing out there to think about doing, but it's going to be a great conversation. Go look up Bobby Davis, look up Coder Foundry, look up his YouTube channel. The man's knocking it out of the freaking park on YouTube. but Bobby Davis from Coder Foundry will be on here on 6/2. We're going to have a special guest. Is our special guest still on the show here? Let me say, yes, our special guest is in the audience today. Actually, our special co-host.
Yeah.
Next week, we're going to have Ms. Susan Fox as our co-host as Randy goes off and builds sandcastles. So thank you, everybody, for showing up. Carolyn, thanks a lot for being with us today.
Thank
Randy,
you.
as always, buddy, it was an absolute thrill to hang out with you. I'll see you later.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. Have a great week, folks.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.